I'm thankful I have you guys back in my video. I have a nice beautiful topic today on how to never be ashamed. You have to understand that as you're growing up, you have to realize that you have been ashamed throughout your life because of the people around you. You have to understand why. You have to understand it's mainly because of sexual reasons. I need to understand that the more successful you become, I promise you those people around you are going to start hating you, and I promise you they're going to start resenting you for how you are and how much more you have, because you can travel and you have more possessions of the world and you have more smarts and you have better looks and you have a better girlfriend and you have a better car and you just have more fame than them. I realize that it's more to that. I realize that you have everything more than them. I realize that other people are getting jealous of you because you have one aspect of life that is just you, that is in terms of much better than them. I realize that they get jealous because of that. I'm never jealous or better. I'm a person who's really teaching something that's really going to help you. You also have to realize that you need to grab my attitude over here, and you have to realize that most people will never do this. I promise you that most people will never even get on a camera to teach anything. You have to understand why. You have to understand because they're ashamed. You have to understand that the world around them shames them. You have to understand that I was shamed for the first 28 years of my life. I was shamed by the people around me. I just woke up today and I realized I can start being sexually intimate with people. I realized that no matter what, I'll teach you how to do that. I'll teach you that you need to be dirty-minded. I promise you, you have to be dirty-minded, and you have to uplift also. You have to realize that in my journal now, I have a mega drive. I also talk about everything I do, and I also approach women on a daily basis, and I speak sexually with them, and I speak sexually with men too. I realize I'm not bisexual. I love to have fun. I love to ask guys, are you single? I need to fuck you. I realize that I just laugh about that. I realize that they have this negative reaction upon that. I realize that they start to hate me because of it. I make haters because of that. You have to realize that I just laugh because of that. I'm not gay. I'm not bisexual. I'm happier. I'm also a person who realizes that being gay is really being happier. You have to understand that there are gay people and there are lesbian people. I need you to understand that there are gay people who are bisexual. I need you to understand that no matter what, that they label gay people as people who just go for men, and lesbians as people who go for women, and bisexual who go for both. You have to understand that, in a way, this is more of a bisexual talk, although I'm not bisexual. You have to understand that it's more of a joke. I love to play a joke on guys. I love to play jokes on women. You have to understand that no matter what, you have to have a joke. You have to have a joke around. You have to have a fool around. You have to fuck around. You understand? You have to go around the 8 Mile, such as Eminem. You understand? You have to realize that no matter what, you need to be a person who's hustling to lift people anyway. You have to realize that Jesus is a person who really only ever lifted. I promise you that that person had no dirty-minded thinking. I promise you that person never talked sexually to any woman. I promise you that person never talked sexually to any other people in the planet. I promise you that Jesus was never sexual with men and women. I promise you Jesus was just lifting. You have to understand that that's the best way to live. You have to understand that the best way to live is just lift. I promise you though that you'll suffer full of rejection. I promise you that you have full of rejection. I also promise you that you will rise and skyrocket yourself much more than anybody else. I also realize that Jesus is far greater than me. I realize no matter what, I was born in a life where I was unaware. I was following people around me and I was sexually shamed about being with women. I realized that many people were jealous of me because I had a woman. I realized other people were jealous of me because I drove women. I realized other people were jealous of me because I had sex with women. I realized that anybody in life is going to fall jealous of you. You have to understand, and you can never stop that. You have to understand that you need to be a person who's fucking the world. You have to understand what that means. You have to talk sexually with guys and women. You have to talk sexually with guys and women in a way that you're still straight. You can also be gay, you can be bisexual, you can be whatever. I talk sexually with both sides because I joke around. You understand? I'm still consciously aware that I would always have sex with a woman. I never have sex with a guy. You have to understand that threesomes and all of that, I'll do it. You have to understand I already fell below Jesus. You have to understand that I am a person who would go do it once. You have to understand that in life you have to do everything once. You have to understand that also you have to live your life such as Jesus did the most. You have to realize that no matter what, you're a person who has fell far beyond Jesus. You have to understand that you're a person who can never seclude to how Jesus lived. You're never perfect, although your soul in this lifetime is just like Jesus. I promise you, your soul is perfect. I promise your soul is going to eternity no matter what you do. I just promise you now, in order for you to never be ashamed, you need to start really escalating your sex talk with women and men. You have to start promoting sex all the way around. You have to realize that it's more about that. You have to realize I was very ashamed about even asking a woman to come back to my house because my dad was very angry and would shame me and would really punish me about bringing a woman home. You have to understand that my dad, who was my biological dad, would cut off my sexual desire because I believed him. I believed that no matter what, that it was shameful to bring home women. I realized I'd never done it ever again. I realized then I went with a crowd. I realized I go with women. I realized that 5, 6 guys who I used to hang around with would say, I never fucking need you with her. I never fucking need you with her. I realized I would say, you can have her, man. I realized I would conform to the group because some other guy wanted her over me. I realized then that guy would get her and have sex with her while I was with the boys. You understand? You understand that the leader of the crew would come attack me and say, I don't fucking need you with her, otherwise you can fucking get lost. I was a person who had no fucking mental strength to even say, whoa. You understand? Who are you? I had no balls. I had no courage to man up and get the woman for myself because some other guy would just come into my house and would just say, fuck off, she's mine. You have to understand that I never compete with women. You have to understand that many people do. You have to understand that you go for the single ones who nobody goes for. You have to realize that many guys never even go for beautiful women. I will promise you though that the more success you have and the bigger resume you have in terms of status, I promise you the easier it is to get hot woman. I promise you the easier it is to get hot woman. I promise you everything I say in terms of for men out there, I never do it for you guys, I do it for God. You have to understand no matter what, I'm a person who's I'm always living my life. I'm always teaching something much more based, I'm teaching something based on how I live. You have to understand that I also teach how Jesus lives. I promise you that Jesus will never even speak about sex. I promise you that Jesus will never even make money today. I promise you that Jesus will never even own real estate. I promise you, although I live like Jesus as much as I can, I promise you that I still fall short no matter what. I can be living like Jesus exactly for the next 7 years, I'll still fall below Jesus. You have to understand though, in order for you to overcome Jesus, you have to do what Jesus did for over 33 years. You have to understand that it's full of rejection. I promise you, you'll have no kids. I promise you that your life would be full of rejection. I promise you that you'll still be alone. I promise you that you'll have no friends. I promise you that people hate you no matter what. I promise you that people even kill you. You have to understand that people kill people who uplift. You have to look at Martin Luther King. I promise you that person is a person who lived. I promise you that person is a person who lifts up. I promise you he was assassinated for doing that. I promise you he took a stand. I promise you he was killed for doing that. I promise you that Mahatma Gandhi is a person who took a stand. I promise you he was killed for doing that. I promise you John F. Kennedy was also somebody who took a stand for something. I promise you he was killed. I promise that Jesus was also someone who took a stand. I promise you he was killed. You have to understand that either way, you just go live your life. You understand? You just go live your life and you have to be a person who is really relating to women and men in a sexual manner. You have to understand that is no shame. You have no shame about it. You have to understand that when you speak about sex, you have no shame about it. You'll be saying, yeah, I watch porn. You'll be saying, I watch masturbation. I do masturbation. I do pornography. I promise you, although I have spoken in my book for you to get out of that trap, I realize that it's a trap in the long term. I realize that Jesus never lived that type of lifestyle. You have to understand that my book still remains. Although I also make sure to stay away from it as much as I can. I realize I do fall sometimes. I realize it's because I really escalate something with a woman. I realize no matter what, it's also something that is, let's say, to be exposed. I realize I have to have fun in some kind of way. I realize it's out there. I realize it's also something that I was doing something and I was experimenting. You have to realize that I have had porn issues for 13 years. You have to understand, although am staying away from it as much as I can in the long term, you have to realize that I have no shame about it. I have no shame about the person I am because I talk about sex. You have to realize that if you're someone who's watched pornography, I promise you that you can never shame me about it. Why would you shame me about it when you've watched it and done it yourself? I mean, when you shame me about pornography, I promise you that you'll go and shame yourself about sex also. You understand? You have to realize that everybody is never perfect. I promise you I am perfect though in the truth. I promise you that no matter what, in life, you never have to be a person who's hiding anything. You have to realize that in life, you talk about your struggles with pornography and masturbation. You just realize that I've overcome it already. I can overcome it. I've overcome it. I've already overcome the world. You have to understand that. I promise you, no matter what, I can see Jesus' lifestyle. I have a much better wisdom drive than anybody else. I'm much more able to succumb to a better way of life than anybody else in this lifetime. I promise you that many people will never believe me. I never care. I realize no matter what, I realize that many people are going to judge me about what I say. I realize that it's also never good to do so. I never need you to judge me. I need you to lift up with me. I need you to realize that in order for you to never be ashamed, you need to talk about your pornography habits. You need to talk about your masturbation habits. You need to talk about the lack of women and men in your life. You have to understand that when you talk about it, you must also realize in order for you to achieve more men and women in your life, you have to also make sure that you're speaking more you're speaking more sexually. You're also following the Jesus lifestyle more. You have to realize that I promote both because no matter what, this life is, let's say, a way to lift up. You must be lifting up no matter what. You must be a person who's lifting up in both aspects. You must be more sexual. You also must be a person who's more lifting. You have to realize that it's about lifting more than it is about sex. You have to realize, I realize that most people never talk about religion. I realize that they never talk about politics and also sex. I realize it's because there is so much judgment going on around there. I promise you that it's because people are ashamed about it. I need you guys to talk more about it. I realize that in that aspect of life, you'll realize something. You realize that no matter what happens, you will also make sure that you're lifting others. You lift others in a way that you'll never be ashamed about it anymore. I promise you that when you never talk about sex, I promise you that you will be a person who is lifting only. I promise you that is the best lifestyle. I promise you it's the best lifestyle for you to lift. I promise you that when you live Jesus' lifestyle alone, I promise you no amount of sex and no amount of people and nothing in this world can never satisfy you as Jesus' growth can. I promise you that in videos and life coaching videos and writing, I promise you that you go and expose everything about yourself. I realize it's more about have fun and also make sure that no matter what, you're a person who realizes that you have to lift more than anything in the world. You have to have fun though. You have to have fun and you have to have an uplifting moment too. You have to give ideas. You have to realize that sexual intent is more arrogant. I can say it's egotistical. I promise you that the more you speak about sex, and I promise you the more you speak about sex and intimacy with other people in terms of sexual terms, I promise you the more ashamed other people are of you. I promise you the more you're going to get shamed for it. You understand? I promise you that you need to realize that it's either you get shamed or you have no kids. I don't know what you're going to do. You have to understand, I'd rather get shamed and have sex around with women because I've already fallen short of God's glory. You understand? I'd rather go around and have sex with the whole crowd. You understand? I realize that many people would shame me for that. I don't care. I realize that it's more about let's have fun and let's lift people at the same time. You understand? I realize that no matter what, it's more that you realize that Jesus is the way and you follow Jesus more than anything else. I promise you that when you have women, you stick to one woman. You stick to one woman. You have to realize that when you're a person who's ashamed and you're speaking about sexual orientation, it's because you're really never dying. It's because you're getting it out there that you have to be sexual. You have to have your cojones. You have to have sexual drive. You understand? You have to go and speak it out. You have to realize that in order for you to connect with the opposite sex, you have to be sexual. In order for you to, if you're gay, in order for you to connect with another man, you still have to be sexual. You understand? You still have to be sexual. You have to understand that sexuality is, let's say, something that Jesus never did. You understand? You have to understand that the world is still running and it's still today because everybody is sexual. You have to understand that the world's going forward and producing more people by the day. You understand that even though people are shaming you about it, you have to understand that the world every 10 years is increasing in population. You just go and make sure you're sexual. You be sexual with guys and girls. You have marriage equality. You have whatever you need. You understand? You go and do it. You have to realize that you go and accept it, although you must lift from it. You must keep lifting. You must keep lifting yourself because you have to realize in order for you to live a Jesus lifestyle, you need to lift yourself more and more. You can only lift yourself more and more when you are really, really alone and doing something productive. I promise you that being sexual alone is never going to lift you, and I promise you it's never going to make you anything more. I promise you it's just a waste of time. I promise you in order for you to have a greater lifestyle, you need to realize that to be less ashamed, you need to increase your wisdom in life. You need to increase your wisdom in life. I promise you, you have to increase your wisdom in life so you can really experience life as Jesus has. I realize it's more about how do you feel about everything. You understand? It's more about, do you feel satisfied with yourself to be able to live without being sexual? I can do that. I realize it's more the way to go. I realize it's more that you realize that you never go back and forth. I realize it's more that the more you talk about sex, the more you're going to be shamed in public about what you speak about. You have to understand that those people who never agree with me, I promise you that if you never agree with me about speaking sexually, I promise you that you must never have sex. I promise you must never have sex. I promise you also must never speak to anybody and look at a woman with adultery and also look at a person with lustful eyes. You understand? I promise you that Jesus never did. I promise you that lust and sexual adultery and the 10 Commandments will show you that you must never, ever, ever speak about the intention to lust and to have sex with anybody in life. I promise you that Jesus never did. I promise you that's how powerful Jesus is. You can shame me all you need. I promise you that you've already fallen. I promise you you're already someone who is, let's say, never Jesus. You understand? I promise you that you have already fallen like me. You never have to shame me for anything I've said. I will, although, continue my life. I can also make sure no matter what, that you understand that I'm just teaching you here my perspective and how I actually live my life. You have to understand that I will only ever go for one woman in life. You have to understand that no matter what, I have no shame about it. I have no shame to have fun. I have no shame to lift myself. I realize it's more about lifting myself than it is about sexual intent. I realize no matter what, that I'm a person who really, really did increase my results over the years. I really do have results because I stayed away from sexuality. I really did lift myself in that manner. I realize now, since I've, let's say, had more fun and I leave room for fun now, in order for me to just go and talk with women online and also be able to speak to them in a way that's sexual and also speak to guys and women sexually in daily life, I realize more that I can just be happier anyway. I realize I grow anyway, you understand? I grow anyway. And most people are going to find me stupid. I promise you they love that kind of stupid. I promise you women and men of all calendars love to be sexual and love to be stupid like that. I promise you that kind of stupid is fun. I realize that's the kind of stupid I do. You understand? Because without fun and without that, I promise you that I'll still reign supreme. I'll still be more successful. I realize that being sexual with other people is more a term to go and have fun and spice up your life a bit. You understand? I promise you that without people in your life, you will do excellent on your own. I promise you that it's more that when you're going with the crowd, you're more sexually ingrained. You understand? I promise you that those people who are more away from the crowd, I promise you those people are more like Jesus. I promise you that those people are more going up. I realize no matter what, that in this video, I've explained the two sides of the story. Would you rather be Jesus or would you rather be sexual? You have to pick Jesus. You have to choose. You can never have both. I realize no matter what, that's the kind of vigor that you need. You have to realize that when you're living Jesus' lifestyle, you will never be ashamed about who you are. You'll never be ashamed. I promise you that when you're a person who is ashamed, you have to forgive yourself anyway. You have to realize that you need to be a person who's really lifting yourself in the crowd. You need to lift. You can only do that through productive thinking. You can only do that through productive way of life. You have to realize that the more fun you have, you have to understand that the more you're dying. You're really dying more. You're really saying to everybody that you'll step down and you'll do nothing. I realize that's why most people are shaming the sexual aura. You understand? That you have to be, I realize that most people are shaming that you have to be sexual with other people. I realize that everybody's doing it. I realize to some certain extent, somebody is sexual with something they've said in their life. I promise you that you've fallen already. I promise you that Jesus was never sexual. I promise you what's sexual about Jesus is the way he lifted. I promise you that's probably the sexualist way that you can do anything. I promise you that everything else is just degrading yourself. I promise you everything else is never even close to Jesus. I promise you although that as I grew up, I promise you I did have little to no sex with women and I had a crowd backing me up in terms of hating me for really just going my own way and lifting the crowd up more than they have me. You have to realize now, since I am living life much better, I realize it's more about let's never be ashamed about anything we do. I realize when you have sex, never be ashamed about it. I mean, when you have a kid, never be ashamed about your kid. You understand? I mean, never show sympathy for what you made. I mean, go and lift up your kid now. I mean, go and live like Jesus did. I mean, have kids. You understand? You need kids. I mean, some of you that are watching this video may never have kids. I don't know. I realize that some people never choose to have kids. I'm totally with you because you understand that Jesus never had kids. You have to understand that some people are never ready for kids, and I appreciate you anyway. I don't care who you are. You may be gay, you may be bisexual, you may be transsexual. I appreciate you. I promise you that I understand where you're coming from. I understand that the world is dirty-minded. I understand that the world is going downhill. I also promise you that the world is going uphill. I promise you that you can go both ways. I promise you, although, that it's much better to go upward. You understand? I promise you it's much better to go upward. You have to realize that the more you follow Jesus' life and stay away from sexual auras and sexual mentality, I promise you the more you're going to lift and be successful. I promise you the more you waste time and have fun with the crowd and have fun with women, I promise you, you may get a woman and a man and get laid 500 times. I promise you that you've just wasted time. You have to really think about your life and you have to really strategize. What do you need to be in life? Do you need to be more like Jesus? Or do you need to be more like sexual intent? I promise you that you can only pick one. I promise you, you have to follow one rule. You have to follow the Jesus rule. I don't care who you are. You have to understand that Jesus' rule is much more important than the sexual rule. You have to understand that Jesus is much more important in how he lived life than the sexual intent. I will say no matter what, that it's honest in terms of life, although you have to understand that even though Jesus did live that kind of lifestyle, without the sexual intent, I promise you that Jesus would never exist. I promise you now that you have never even sinned about what you've done. I promise you never even sinned in your life. I promise you that Jesus was just standing for something when Jesus was living. I promise you that Jesus was just one side of the story. I promise you that Jesus could have switched. I promise you that Jesus could have switched the tables, and being the Jesus who goes and is just sexual and never lifts up. I realize that many people are doing that. I realize that many people are just having sex and never lifting up. You have to realize that most people are lifting up, although they're doing it at a slower rate. I promise you that most people are lifting up, although they're doing it in a slower rate. I promise you, although, that when you're really calculating how Jesus can go and flip the switch, I promise you that Jesus would live on. I promise you that Jesus would go backwards. I promise you that Jesus would have the most sex in the world and the most women and would own the most land. You understand? I promise you that Jesus would be king of all worlds. You have to understand that Jesus is already that. You have to understand that it's more about, let's never be ashamed. You have to make sure that you're lifting people. You have to make sure that you're more of a life coach now. You have to realize that since the world is this way, I've realized something. I realized that most people are against me no matter what I do. I realized that I have sent some messages in terms of how I live life. I realized that this person is negative on me in terms of loving his sister, and also I never hate his sister. I'm never hating. And also I realized, and also speaking about his sister in a way that says I'll never go for her. I realized that he would get offended in both sides. I mean, he gets offended when I love his sister. I realize he also gets offended when I reject his sister and say I'll never go for her because of this. I realize he would get jealous. I realize no matter what, I'm still honest. You have to understand that no matter what happens, when you're flipping the sides of the two stories and you're saying that you'll never go for someone, and I promise you that that person's gonna really, let's say, traumatize you. I promise you that you never fall traumatized. I realize that no matter what, you just realize it's just fun. You have to realize that those people who are on both sides of the story are really, let's say, having a more difficult time to really speak their intent, although you're still growing even in the moment. You have to be a person who's really intent in what you're saying and doing. You have to be one-sided all the time. You always have to be one-sided. You can never be both-sided. Although you can. You have to understand that life's contradictory. You have to learn from everything that you do. You have to learn from who you are. You have to learn that when you fail, have fun with it. You have to understand, you have to crack a joke. You have to be more entertaining. You have to have a sexual aura on you. You have to have more kids. You can also be more Jesus-like too. You have to realize I have a nice, beautiful master plan now where I can be more fun and I can also be more like Jesus. I can do both at the same time because no matter what, I have a journal which helps me to be like Jesus more. I do life coaching videos because it helps me to be more like Jesus and lift people up. I also have a mega drive where it just lifts people up. You understand? I also make sure that behind the scenes, no matter what, I try to save my conversations, and those conversations that I do have in daily life and online, I promise you that it's all fun related. I promise you it's just fun related. I have, let's say I have one life to live. I may as well live it to the best of my ability. I'm saying that you must also live it that way. I'm also saying that it's just my belief that you must live it in a way that you're sexually able to have sex and also have a nice, you have to have a high sex drive. You also have to live like Jesus. You understand? You have to have both life. You have to have both. You have to understand that Jesus allows you to do that. You understand that you have to understand that Jesus already forgives you. You understand that Jesus is allowing you to live life and have sex and have fun and live your life so that you never have to be ashamed of it. I promise you that most people cause anxiety and scarcity and have shame and guilt and secrecy around sex and people. I have to understand that no matter what, it's because that most people are frightened and scared because they've been taught how to do nothing all their life. You have to do something now. You have to realize that in order for you to be less shameful, you need to be a person who's speaking more about sex. You also need to be a person who's speaking more about the Jesus lifestyle and promoting Jesus. I promise you, no matter what, that it's more that way than anything. You understand? You need both lives. You need both. You need the good and evil in life. You need the yin yang of life. I promise you that no matter what, that sex and having sex, I promise you that without having sex, I promise you nobody would even know Jesus. I promise you that sex matters. I promise you that having a sex drive matters. I promise you that you have a penis. I promise you have a vagina. I promise you have it for a reason. You understand? I promise you have it for a reason. I promise you never have to be ashamed about it. I promise you that many people may shame me about watching pornography and masturbating and having all this fun that I did. I promise you that you had fun too. I promise you that make sure that you never judge me, because otherwise you will be judged. You understand? You will understand that when you judge someone, you judge yourself. You will never again do what I did because you hate me for what I've done. You have to understand that when you judge someone and you never go from it, you hate that person for what they've done. You have to forgive. You have to let go. You have to realize it's more about, let's have fun, let's have sex, let's have orgies, let's have threesomes. You understand? You never be ashamed about it. You just go and do it. You can do it. You relax. You relax. You relax. You have to realize also, you have to start lifting up. You have to start lifting up, and you have to realize that there is a tactic in order for you to live life, and it's more like Jesus. You understand? You live life more like Jesus, because Jesus is an inspiration of your life. You have to understand that you can be a nice individual on camera. You can also speak out all your thoughts and expose yourself fully. I promise you that you have no shame about it. I promise you that most people will never even show their face to say that they would have orgies and sex and threesomes and all that, because they're so ashamed about it. I'm never ashamed about it. I've never done threesomes and orgies. I would do it though. I'll do it. You understand? I've never done it though. I've been scared to do it. I've been so ashamed about it. All I'm saying is forgive yourself. I'm just saying let go. I mean, go and have fun. I mean, go and lift people. I mean, go and be more compassionate. I realize no matter what, you can also be more compassionate in your day. I realize no matter what, that in 24 hours of the day, you can set aside 1 hour for having fun. You can also set 23 hours of the day just being like Jesus. You have to go and do that. I still have to plan all of this for myself. I realize no matter what, I'm fairly new to the game. I realize that in 28 years of my life, I've been shamed. You understand? I've been shamed by people to have sex. I've been kicked aside to let other people have beautiful women instead of me. I've let other people have more than I have in terms of women. You have to understand that you have to let. You have to understand there's no regret in that. I have no regret. I realized that no matter what, I could have got them, bro. I just went the Jesus path more. I realized that the Jesus path did help me in terms of becoming less shameful. I'm less shameful. I'm able to speak up on camera now. I'm able to brand myself. I'm able to show my fashion industry up on Instagram. I'm able to take photos as much as I can on the street in front of people and talk on camera in front of people and be live in front of an audience and public speak. I'm able to look good. I'm able to lose weight. I'm able to do this because I live more like Jesus. I now have to set aside a time schedule for myself to have fun and also to just live my life. I realize that I can have fun at any time. I can also have fun and lift at the same time. I just do both. I don't care that you call me arrogant about having sex. I promise you that it's just, you need to have sex. I believe in sex. You understand? I believe that you have to have sex. I have a personal opinion. You also will have a personal opinion about that. You have to realize no matter what, that for me it's more about let's keep humanity going. I realize it's more of a leadership term. You understand? Otherwise, I don't know why I live life. I rather probably would have never even started these video attempts because I thought the world was dying. You understand? I promise you when the world is dying and no more people are making more people, I promise you I'll stop all this content. I'll never even fucking do it anymore. You understand? What's the fucking point? You understand? I realize that you have to keep humanity going. I realize no matter what, I can do my videos again. I can start lifting people such as Jesus did. I can still emulate Jesus. I promise you that Jesus is my #1 inspiration in life. I promise you, although, that I still have my disciplines. I still have the disciplines that I have with Jesus in terms of what I made to become more successful. I'm still able to grow myself daily. I realize that when I have fun though, I realize I have no growth there. I realize that's something I sacrifice. I sacrifice a bit of growth time for a bit of fun. I realize it's a time trade-off. I realize that the more fun you have, I realize the more you're dying. I realize the more you're slow. I realize the more that you're less productive in life. I realize that it's much more healthier for you to start growing more and more daily, so you can be better and better always. I promise you that you just be better than yesterday every single day. I promise you that you set aside however many hours in a day. You can say, I'll have fun 6 hours of the day. I'll also have this much growth time in my day, whatever. You can do that. I realize for myself, I will do it at any time. I'll do it any time because I love to be flexible. I realize that some people are also more strict about it. I realize that if you need more success, I promise you that you can go and limit yourself to 2 hours of fun and talking to women and men and just doing whatever. I mean, you're doing nothing. You understand? I can do nothing at any time. I can do something at any time. I just stick to those barriers. I realize that I'd rather have a flexible schedule because I believe that those people have flexible. I realize that those people who have flexible schedules are more able to succeed than those who are limiting themselves with numbers. I never limit myself with numbers, although I do have a 1 hour rule that says 23 hours of the day I must stay in my room, and 1 hour of the day I must go and get food. I realize that's my 1 hour rule. I step out of the hostel or accommodation I set myself in so that I can go to the shop and get my food and come back into my room and accommodation again. So I only am outside ever for 1 hour. I realize no matter what, I'm never outside. I'm only living inside. You have to understand. I never look for anything in terms of pleasure in the outside world. I'm always looking inside. I'm looking to Jesus. I realize that the main focus must be Jesus more so. You have to realize that sex alone and fun alone will never satisfy you. You'll always be looking for more of that. You have to understand that the more you have sex, you have to understand that the more you're going to look for it. You have to understand that the more growth you have, I promise you, the more you're going to look for it. I'm just saying to spice your life up. I'm just saying spice your life up and have women and growth. I mean, have men and growth. You understand? Have both sides. I realized that Jesus only had himself in terms of life and was never really interested in anybody other than himself because that's the only way to be. I realized that when you're sexual, you're more interested in other people than you are in yourself. I promise you that's the case. I promise you that when you're having fun, I promise you that you're more interested in other people and having fun with them than you are in your growth. I promise you that Jesus would say for you to never do this. I promise you that Jesus would say for you to just go and never have sex and also never have money. I mean, Jesus never had money. You have to understand. I promise you that Jesus would say, have money, just never work for it. I promise you that Jesus would say for you to never work for money, although when somebody gives you money, you can receive it. You have to understand that Jesus would say, never own real estate. I may be a bit confusing. I realize that no matter what, I'm still growing from it. You have to realize that I'm on point with what I say. I realize that I'm never correct, I'm never right nor wrong. I realize that life is contradictory, as Osho says. I realize it's more about let go and let the information sink in so you can really, really prosper and succeed anyway. You understand? Because I'm not lying about anything. I realize that it's just contradictory. I understand that when you're contradictory, you're going backwards and forwards. So you can find yourself a better perspective. You have to do that on video. You have to be a person who's much more into life. You have to be more into yourself and what you're doing than other people. You have to understand that Jesus was that way. You have to understand that Jesus was only I. You understand? I promise you that sexual intent is more I and them. I promise you that when you involve everything sexual, I promise you that you're more saying, I'd rather just do the crowd and also I. You understand? I promise you that Jesus was never doing the crowd. I promise you that Jesus was never interested in people around him. I promise you that Jesus was more interested in himself than anybody. I promise you that Jesus was more interested in himself than anybody else. I need you to understand that the most productive lifestyle that you're ever going to have is a lifestyle where you're following more Jesus and you have no sexual intent. I mean, you're never sexually occupied. I mean, you're never sexually stimulated. I promise you that that path is going to make you far more successful than any other path. I need you to understand why. I need you to understand that you grow when you're never doing sexual orientation. I promise you it's that simple. I promise you that when you just stick to Jesus' side, I promise you when you just teach Jesus and you never teach anything else, I promise you that you'll be one road. You'll just be the Jesus road. I promise you that it's going to be an easier life for you as you grow up. I promise you that it's going to be something that is just you and Jesus. You'll understand Jesus more and more the more you work for Jesus. I promise you that having fun, though, I promise you it's more for your own selfish pleasure. I mean, it's more for your ego. You have to understand that the world is still running. I promise you many people are egotistical in the planet. I promise you that many people are having sex. I promise you that you never kill your ego, otherwise you're going to die. You need your mind. You need your mind, although you never have to live in your mind, you can live in your heart. You have to understand that when you're speaking in terms of Jesus, I promise you it's much better to speak just in Jesus terms than it is to speak in both terms. I'd rather you speak in Jesus terms than speaking sex and how to have sex with people. I realize that when you're speaking about how to have sex with people, I realize it's got nothing to do with Jesus. I realize that no matter what, I still never feel ashamed about it. You have to understand that it's more, without sex, there is no continuation of Jesus. I promise you that Jesus forgives you anyway. I promise you that Jesus would understand. I promise you that Jesus would love for this world to keep going. I promise you also that I remember that Jesus only does live for Jesus. I promise you that Jesus never lived for the world that we live in. I promise you that anything of this world, I promise you that Jesus never cares about it. I promise you that Jesus would rather live in eternity, in heaven. I promise you that there is a God. I promise you there is someone that's really looking over us. I promise you that person is more than a person, and it's something that you can never describe. I promise you that those people who are ashamed are people who have been taught to never have sex and also all of this nature, because no matter what, you see Jesus. You see Jesus, that in Jesus' life, I promise you that's the religion. You understand? That's why you get shamed. You get shamed by your parents, you get shamed by people, and you get hated for going around town. You understand? You get hated for having sex. You get hated for it. You understand? Because you're never living Jesus' lifestyle. I promise you they're doing it. I promise you they're getting married. You understand? You have to understand they're getting married. You have to understand that no matter what, when you get married, I promise you when you get married, I promise you that Jesus was never married. I promise you Jesus was never married. I also see that in the Bible, it says you must never go for your neighbor's wife. I promise you it says that you must never commit adultery. I promise you that when you get into a marriage, you've already done it. You have to understand that. You've already committed adultery when you are getting married to another woman or man. You have to understand that no matter what happens, that Jesus never done that. You have to understand that Jesus was never a person who got married. You have to understand that Jesus was never ashamed about who he was. I promise you that's the best interpretation of how to never be ashamed. I promise you the more fun you have, I promise you the more shame you're going to have because you let yourself down. I'm just saying for you to let yourself down less and have less sex while you're following Jesus more. I promise you that's more of the better path. I promise you no matter what, that you never have to be ashamed of how many other people are having more fun than you. I promise you because they're having fun, I promise you they're dying. I promise you they're getting old. You have to understand that you need to be a person who's teaching more like Jesus. I feel like I started to lose myself also because no matter what, I started to have more fun, although no matter what, I still have to figure it out myself. I realize no matter what, it's more that I never figure it out. I'm still learning, I'm still growing. I realize that for myself, I do wish for kids. I do wish to have a goal to have kids and get married. You have to understand that is committing adultery. You have to understand that's having sex. You have to understand that Jesus was never for sex. You have to understand that Jesus never stood by it. You understand? You have to understand that. You have to understand that Jesus was never the person who will go and grab your wife. You have to understand that Jesus was fully trusted. You have to understand that Jesus is purity. You have to understand that Jesus never fucking cared about how many people were having orgies around him and how many people were having sex and had women around them. I promise you, Jesus was that strong that he could walk 40 days and 40 nights in the desert and never even die. You have to understand that Jesus not. I promise you that Jesus not. I promise you that Jesus never loved anything of this world. You never have to also. You just focus on Jesus. I promise you that you can talk with Jesus every single day and follow Jesus more and more. I realize I failed many times with watching pornography and masturbation and talking to women in a sexual way and having phone sex and having sex in brothels and all this. I've done it. I've had sex with escorts and all this. I'm not proud. I'm just proud of the truth. You have to understand the truth is just growing. You just grow. You never care anymore. You just let go. What you have done, you forgive it. You forgive it, you let go, you go live your life. You become more successful. You can only become more successful when you're living more like Jesus. I promise you nothing else is going to matter. I promise you that those people who are doing anything else but success are having fun. I promise you they're just having fun and everybody else is flying past them. I mean, 99% of the world is just going around and fooling around. You have to understand that. I have to also make sure I'm more disciplined. I have to make sure that my fun never overtakes me. I still have to do more videos. I still have to give more content. I still have to make sure I speak more of Jesus' words in every single video and inside my journal. I realize I mix it up so I can learn also. I realize no matter what, that it's more that I live like Jesus did. I'm not ashamed about having sex. I'm not ashamed because I didn't even know Jesus until 28. You have to realize that at the moment, I'm more successful than ever before. I mean, I look greater than ever. I feel greater than ever. I am more in terms of my finances and I'm more in terms of my spirituality and who I am. I look better. I'm more mature. I feel healthier than ever. I'm a vegan. I've lost 47 kilos. I'm a fashion model right now. You have to realize I've done that because I've lived Jesus' lifestyle. I've been following Jesus. I've been lifting. I've been lifting for 3 years straight. I've had little to no sex in between that. I've had maybe 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 casual encounters with women in 3 years. You have to understand that it's fairly low. I realized that I was feeling like I was suffering because of this. You have to realize I've masturbated many times in my life. I've watched pornography many times. I was ashamed about it. I was so ashamed about it that I became more successful. I started walking the Jesus road. I remember myself in my journal, I was writing my journal. I said, I need Jesus. I realized that I mentioned all these people. I was on the ice back then. I mentioned all these people. I said, I never fucking care about them anymore. I realized no matter what, I'm now more successful because I did say that. I realized that no matter what's happened in my life, I see both sides of the story now. I'm more aware of how Jesus lived. I'm more aware of how the world lives. I realized that 99% of the world is just fooling around. 1% of the world is productive, more so. You have to understand that 1% of the crowd and the world is only growing, while 99% of the world is just fucking around and having fun. I mean, they don't fucking care. I mean, they're just people who are never going to rise to fame. I mean, it's never about the fame. I realize it's much more about the freeway. I realize it's more about the freedom. I realize it's more about your mentality and leadership now. I mean, when you're never speaking about sex in a seminar and you're never speaking about sexual orientation in front of people, I promise you that you're going to lead better. I promise you're going to lead better. I promise you that when you speak sex in front of people, you sound more egotistical. I admit it. I've probably been very egotistical in this video. I understand. I also realize that I've grown from it. I've learned something with it. I forgive myself. Do you forgive me? I promise you that Jesus forgives me. I realize I've got nothing to worry about. I realize that we're both growing. I realize now we can start speaking up about it more. You understand? I realize that Jesus will forgive you no matter what you do. I hope that you go and do the same for others. I realize no matter what, that even though you have fun, I realize that you are doing that and you're consciously aware of it now, that when you have fun with women and men and you just have fun, I promise you're just never growing. I promise you that you are in your comfort zone. I was a person who was going to clubs and nightclubs on the weekends in Sydney. I promise you, on a Thursday night, I was at Ivy. On a Friday night, I was at Home the Venue. I promise you, on a Saturday night, I was at the Argyle. I promise you, on a Sunday, I was at Ivy. I was repeating this over and over. I promise you then I'd go to a DEFCON festival, I'd go to a Transmission festival, I'd go to Sunset Brothers, I'd go to Alex K. I promise you, no matter what, I was that person who would just go to music clubs. I was always at the casino on weekends. I had nothing else to do. I had no life. You have to understand, I was a person living for the weekends. If you're a person who is living for the weekends, you have to realize that no matter what you do, you must never do that. You must realize that you never live for the weekends. You must be a person who's only ever living your life to the according. You're only living your life to according to how Jesus does it. You must be a person who's living like Jesus. You must realize that you never live for the weekends. You live every day. You start living every day. You start doing something more passionate with yourself. I realize that I have a music passion. I have a life coaching passion. I write in my journal now. I write in my journal everything. I learn about people and I study about people more so. I realize that my goal is to get everybody to hate me. I realize no matter what, that the world hates me already. I realize that nobody cares about me. You have to understand that I don't care. I live more like Jesus now. I have more success. I will continue to grow. I realize that when I get sick of fun, I realize that I'll cut it out. I'll cut it out totally. I mean, I'm more aware of how much fun I have now than ever. I realize I can go berserk on that. I realize also that when I do that, I fail. I fail in a way that I waste the time. I never was productive in my day. I realize although you have to realize that sometimes in life, you just make your own decision about it. I realize for me, I can have fun. I can also be Jesus. You have to realize that's my personal taste. I'd rather live a bit of time every single day where I can, here and there, talk to a woman and have fun with her and have sex with her. I realize that I can have sex with 1 or 10 of them. You have to understand. I realize that. I don't care. I realize that you may shame me about it. I don't care. You have to realize that it's a world today where you're making more kids anyway. You have to realize that it's just as worse for you to make a kid than it is to have sex with 10 women. I promise you that Jesus didn't either. You're going to judge me for that? I promise you no matter what that you go and live your life. You go and live your life in fun and glory and lift up. I'll never judge you for having fun. I'll never judge you. I just promise you that I will lead you into a Jesus lifestyle more and more. I hope explain more and more ideas about how to live more in both areas. I realize no matter what, it's more about Jesus now. I realize it's more how to live like Jesus than it is how to have fun. I realize anybody can have fun. I realize anybody can have fun. I realize all you have to do is just talk about sex all day long. I realize that when you're a person who's trying to become less, in terms of, I say more in life, I mean, when you are trying to be less ashamed about sex, you talk about more sex. You go to a woman, you relate everything about sex with her, I promise you that you go and get laid. I promise you. I promise you go and get laid because you're tying the conversation down, everything in terms of you're just speaking about sex. I promise you that means that you'll go out and do it. I promise you although that you'll never be ashamed about it. I promise you when you are a person who's just talking about sex with everybody, you can be a person who is with guys just joking around because you may be straight and have fun with that. You can also go to a woman and when you see a woman, you're just talking about sex. You're talking about body, you're talking about touching, you're talking about her eyes, you're talking about attraction. You have to understand that when a man and woman have attraction, you have to understand that they're sexually oriented to go and have sex. You have to realize that the conversation is already about sex the moment you see her. I realize it's the same for you ladies out there. I realize I never do it for you, I do it for something bigger than I. I realize no matter what, that it's completely forgiven for me to do so. I realize that many people are ashamed to talk about it. I realize that when you need a woman in your life, you need to go and speak to woman in a sexual way. I mean, I just had a fantasy about you. I realize that she'll start to play with you. I realize that you'll say, I was picturing me from with you inside the bed, I was behind you and I was really holding your hair and somebody else was watching me. I promise you that is something that you can say. I'm not ashamed about it, I've said already. You have to understand that that woman will then correspond in a sexual manner and will say, wow, I believe that's some kind of dream that I love. You have to understand that you're both being sexually there, oriented. You have to understand that there is some sexual attraction going. I'm just explaining how it goes. You have to realize with guys, you can say anything that is also sexual. You understand? You go make it up. You have to realize that no matter what, I've been correspondent in this video to teach something that Jesus would never teach. I realize no matter what, that although Jesus would forgive me anyway. I realize that many people are never talking about sex around the crowd because they're so ashamed. I realize that's why they never get laid. I realize that's why they never have a woman and a man. I promise I was a person who never had that, although I gained more by never having that. I realize although I'll show you that Jesus will teach you that no matter what, even though they never go for you, I realize that no matter what, you have me by your side. I will always lift you, I'll always protect you, I'll always make sure that you can trust in me. I need you to have more faith, I need you to realize that you need a passion for yourself. You need to go and do your passion, you need to study the Bible. You need to teach more of the Bible than anything else. I mean, Jesus would say, teach anything else other than sex. I mean, Jesus would never shame you about it. I realize that Jesus would forgive you. You just need to be a person who's really more empathetic towards yourself. And when you get to the stage of where I am in life, you realize that you have two passions. I mean, I have one passion in life, and that's just to grow and be better than yesterday. I realize that I may make mistakes in this video. I realize I made no mistakes. I really taught you something. I've taught you something for nothing. I've done the content for free. I've shown my face as an individual who has a much broader mind. You have to realize I have a much broader mind than yesterday. I've judged you? Never. I've never judged you. I've only lifted you in this video. You have to realize that those people who go and I realize that those people who go and have fun are people who are going to really die more. I realize that when you go and have more fun, you will be dying more and you'll be getting older. I realize that when you're living the Jesus lifestyle more and more, I promise you that you over time will be looking younger and more successful. You'll also have one woman with Jesus. You understand? That with Jesus, you're only going to have you. You pick your side. You pick your side. You can also go the both ways. You can have Jesus and you can have sex. You can have Jesus every day. You can have sex too. You can have some fun. You can have Jesus and have some fun too. You have to understand that you need to entertain yourself. You also need Jesus more. You just need to be a person. You need to figure it out for yourself what works for you. I can never decide for you. I realize at the moment, at this stage, I will be doing both. I will be having fun with women and men in terms of sexuality because I find it hilarious. I find it hilarious to be sexual with both. I'm not bisexual though. I'm a straight person and I'll only ever marry a woman. I'll only ever have sex with a woman. And you have to understand, I'm not the guy that will go and have sex with a guy and literally have to place my private parts in his bumhole. You have to understand that I have no shame about that. You have to understand that I can go and be sexually oriented with guys and women. I'll just never ever have sex with the guy literally. You understand? I have no shame about it. I understand that it seems very egotistical and funny right now. I realize no matter what, I love to entertain. I realize that entertainment is all about this. I realize that's why we have entertainment, because it's all about just fun and games. I stopped fun and games 6 years ago. I stopped it. I started to do something productive. I started to do quotes. I started to do content. I started to do life coaching. I started to do fashion. I started to do traveling. I realized that's more fulfilling for me and the Jesus lifestyle. I can always go to Jesus and I can say, Jesus, you know, honestly, for me, I will keep doing it more so now. I'll limit my fun for 1 hour a day. I'll do it for this certain time period. I realize everything else, I'll do you. I realize that I have more fun anyway doing Jesus. I promise you, no matter what, that it's more so that I just experiment more and I see what works for me. I realize until now, I realize that Jesus has never failed me. I realize that walking with Jesus' path has always increased my life force and helped me to live a stronger life in mentality and also in my heart. You have to realize that you need to be a person who's spiritual You have to become more spiritual. You have to grow. You have to become more confident. I promise you that having fun and having only fun will never make you more confident and will never make you more courageous, and you'll only ever be in your comfort zone. I promise you that those people who are living Jesus' lifestyle are going to be entrepreneurs and people who are really leading and lifting up more. I promise you that I will say you will never fail with Jesus. I promise you that you're going with that road. You go with that road. I promise you that's how you never stay ashamed. I promise you that's how to never be ashamed in life. You follow Jesus' road. You have no sex in life. You have no fun in life with the opposite sex and the crowd. You understand? I mean, there's no fun in games. I mean, there's no chasing women for sex. I mean, there's no sexual orientation going on. I mean, you're never relating with sex about anything. You're never sexual. I promise you, the more you're never sexual, I promise you, the more you'll never be ashamed. I promise you that when you're going towards Jesus' life, I promise you that way, you'll never be ashamed because you'll be strong. You'll be more successful than the rest of the crowd. I promise you, no matter what, when you do have fun, I need you to let it go. I need you to just forgive yourself. I realize that no matter what, you just say, I am Richard Becker. I forgive myself about what I've done. I realize that no matter what, that it's never really the outside world that's really going to grow you. You have to realize it's only you that's ever going to grow you. You have to realize that when you're disappointed, you're never really disappointed in other people. You're disappointed with how much fun you've had without lifting other people up. I'm just saying, lift people more and lift people 99% of the time while you can have fun 1% of the time. I realize no matter what, that if you want to be more extreme and live a more successful lifestyle, you just go to Jesus route 100%. You just go to Jesus route. You go to Jesus route 100% of the You go to Jesus route 100% of the time. I promise you that you will never care for this world and having a kid. I promise you never care about sex. I promise you that you go and aspire to invent something great in this world, such as Nikola Tesla. I promise you Nikola Tesla never had a woman. I promise you that person was a virgin. I promise you that person never had sex. I don't know about Nikola Tesla. I just realized that no matter what, he never had a kid. I realized that he never had a woman. I realized no matter what, that you realize that those people who are virgins and never have sex and go and walk the Jesus lifestyle, I promise you they rule the world. I promise you they figure out more wisdom than the whole world. I promise you that it's worth it. I promise you that more wisdom I would exchange. I mean, I'll never exchange my wisdom for sex. I'll never exchange my wisdom for fun. I realize I value wisdom more. I value wisdom more than fun. I realize that Jesus is always the way for me. You have to understand that the more sexual you are with the crowd around you, the more egotistical you become. You have to be careful. You have to be careful. You have to make sure that you increase your disciplines in terms of you never fall back. You keep moving forward. You understand? I can get judged in this video. I promise you that you never have to judge me. I forgive you for judging me anyway. You have to understand that the more women and men you do have sex with, I promise you the more you're wasting time. You're just wasting time. I'd rather you be going to get more successful and more fame and more freedom for yourself. I realize it's never about the fame. I realize it's more about the freedom and Jesus' wisdom than it is having sex with people. I realize anyway, guys, I will say that in this video, I taught you something about how to never be ashamed. You walk the Jesus lifestyle, I promise you'll never be ashamed. I need you guys to share this video. I need you guys to really prosper and have a better mentality, and also make sure that you just live more in integrity and live your talk. You understand? Never be ashamed about your failures and what mistakes you made. Make sure you learn from them. Make sure you discipline yourself and also create yourself much better habits. I'll see you guys in the next video.